Faye sat in the library, furiously typing out her notes on renal physiology when she noticed Amaka. She wasn't someone you could easily ignore. Amaka exuded confidence, effortlessly commanding attention without saying a word. Faye found herself glancing up from her laptop more often than she wanted to admit, drawn to the quiet intensity in Amaka's eyes. That day, something shifted in Faye. Her world had tilted slightly, and Amaka was the center of it. Days passed before Amaka and Faye exchanged more than polite nods. It wasn't until a steady group session that they finally spoke. Amaka approached Faye with a smile that softened her sharp features, asking to borrow her notes. Faye's heart skipped a beat as their hands brushed while passing the notes. It was an innocent interaction, but Faye felt something electric in that brief contact. She wondered if Amaka felt it too, or it was just wishful thinking. What began as a casual study session turned into something more. Amaka and Faye started spending more time together, not just in the library, but outside classes as well. They took long walks around campus, sharing stories about their families and dreams. Faye kept her attraction very deep, unsure if Amaka felt the same way. But each time Amaka laughed at one of Faye's jokes or gently touched her arm, she felt the walls between them slowly breaking. At home, Faye faced a different reality. Her parents had always dreamed of her becoming a doctor, and she was their pride and joy. Conversations over dinner often revolved around her grades, her future, and the reputation of their family. They expected perfection from her, and the weight of their expectations felt like the nerves around her neck. Faye knew that her parents' love came with conditions. Love for a daughter who conformed, who didn't stray from the path they had meticulously planned for her. Faye's growing affection for Amaka became harder to ignore as their friendship deepened. Faye caught herself longing for more time together, more closeness, and more of Amaka's warmth. It was an impossible situation. Her parents would never accept her loving another woman. Nigeria too was far from welcoming to people like her. She felt the walls closing in, but she also couldn't help the way her heart fluttered when Amaka was near. One evening, after a particularly long study session, Faye couldn't hold it in any longer. They sat together on a bench outside the campus library, the moonlight casting soft shadows on their faces. "Amaka, there's something I need to tell you," Faye began, her voice trembling. Amaka turned to her, a knowing look in her eyes, as if she had been waiting for the moment. "I think I'm falling for you." The silence that followed was thick with tension, and Faye braced herself for rejection. Amaka didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in closer, her lips brushing Faye's ear as she whispered, "I felt the same way for a while." It was as if the world had stopped spinning. Faye couldn't believe that the girl she had admired from afar felt the same. But as quickly as the euphoria settled in, the reality of their situation weighed them down. Loving each other wasn't going to be easy, especially not in their country, where such love was forbidden. They started meeting in secret, careful to keep their relationship hidden from prying eyes. Amaka suggested late-night study sessions, weekends spent in quiet cafes far away from campus, and stolen moments between classes. It was thrilling but also terrifying. Faye lived in a constant fear that someone would discover their secret. If her parents or classmates ever found out, the consequence could be devastating. Faye's parents began to notice a change in her. She was more distant at family gatherings, often distracted by Amaka's thoughts. Then, out of the blue, Faye's father received a devastating news. His business was facing a major financial scandal. Their family's reputation at stake, and the ripple effects were immediate. In the wake of the scandal, Faye's scholarship was abruptly revoked, and her dreams of completing medical school were suddenly in jeopardy. Feyi was devastated. Her scholarship was the only thing keeping her in school, and with her family's financial troubles, they couldn't afford to pay her tuition. Her once promising future now seemed uncertain. When she told Amaka what had happened, Amaka's face hardened with determination. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll figure something out. I won't let you lose everything you worked for." As Feyi's financial situation worsened, Amaka began to explore ways to help. One night, she presented Feyi with a plan, dangerous but potentially lucrative. Amaka had connections to a shadowy world of underground deals and risky investments. If they could just raise enough money quickly, Feyi could pay her tuition and secure her future, but the plan was risky, and if it failed, it would cost them far more than money. Feyi hesitated. She knew that Amaka was trying to help, but the plan seemed reckless. She couldn't imagine risking everything just for a chance to stay in school. Yet, she also couldn't bear the thought of losing her dreams, or Amaka. Torn between caution and desperation, Feyi made a decision that would change the course of both their lives forever. Despite her reservation, Feyi agreed to Amaka's plan. They met with Amaka's contact in the rundown part of the town, far from safety of their campus. The man, shady but convincing, explained the deal. They would invest in a black market operation that promised high returns in the matter of weeks. The plan made Feyi's stomach turn, but with her family scandal and the revoked scholarship looming over her, she saw no other way. They shook hands, sealing a deal that would lead them into uncharted territories. As the days passed, Feyi struggled to keep up with appearance at school. She felt the weight of the secret between her and Amaka, and the guilt gnawed at her. Her grades began to slip, and she avoided her parents' call. Meanwhile, Amaka remained resolute, encouraging her to stay focused on their end goal. But the strain of keeping everything hidden, her relationship, the deal, her crumbling academic performance was taking a toll. Feyi's family grew suspicious. Her mother, a deeply religious woman, noticed a distance between them and insisted on a family meeting. Feyi knew facing the family and her parents would be inevitable. During a tense dinner, her father pressed her about her studies, and her mother probed into her personal life. Feeling cornered, Feyi tried to deflect, but the pressure built. Her mother's final question cut deep. "Is there something you're not telling us, Feyi?" Her heart raced, but she remained silent, terrified of revealing her secrets. One night, Feyi and Amaka were nearly caught together. They had rented a hotel room far from campus to spend some time alone. But as they left the building, they ran into one of their classmates. The girl's eyes flicked between them with suspicion. Though she didn't say anything, Feyi could yet feel the tension rising. "We need to be more careful," Amaka said, her voice firm. The risk of exposure was greater than ever, and they both knew it. After weeks of waiting, Amaka's investments paid off. The returns were impressive, more than enough to cover Feyi's tuition. For the first time in weeks, Feyi felt a sense of relief. They celebrated quietly in Amaka's apartment, away from prying eyes. But even in the moment of triumph, a shadow hung over them. The deal had become dangerous, and Amaka hinted that more opportunities like these were available. Feyi wasn't sure if she wanted to take another risk, but Amaka's excitement was contagious. With her tuition secured, Feyi's focus shifted back to her studies, but the excitement from the investment deal lingered in Amaka. She began talking about bigger plans, more deals, larger risks. Feyi was hesitant. She wanted to get her degree, make a life for herself, and not be drawn deeper into the world she barely understood. But Amaka's ambition was growing, and Feyi feared that her love might not be enough to hold her back. As Feyi tried to distance herself from Amaka's growing obsession with making money, their relationship became strained. The tension between them was palpable. Feyi missed the days when their biggest secret was their love for each other, not the dangerous deals lurking in the background. Amaka, however, seemed more determined than ever to secure their future by any means necessary. They began arguing more, their once peaceful moments together filled with unease. Amaka's next deal didn't go as planned. They had invested a larger sum this time, but the returns were delayed and the panic set in. Feyi watched as Amaka's confidence faltered, her calm exterior cracking under the pressure. For the first time, Amaka admitted she might have made a mistake. The weight of their decisions pressed heavily on Feyi's chest, and she wondered if they had gone too far. Just as things seemed to be spiral out of control, Feyi received an unexpected offer of help. One of her professors, Dr. Ibrahim, noticed her declining grades and pulled her aside after class. He was kind but direct, asking if everything was okay. After a long silence, Feyi confided in him, though not the full truth. Dr. Ibrahim offered her some tutoring and hinted that he could help her apply for emergency grant to cover her tuition. Feyi was torn between accepting legitimate help or staying tied to Amaka's dangerous plans. As Amaka's obsession with fast money deepened, she began cutting corners and getting involved with more dangerous individuals. Feyi noticed the change. Amaka was no longer the confident, controlled woman she had fallen for. Instead, she seemed frantic and always edgy, constantly checking her phone for updates on deals. Their relationship, once full of love and laughter, now was a minefield. One night, after yet another argument, Feyi broke down. She confessed to Amaka that she couldn't handle the stress anymore, the secrets, the risk, the fear of being caught. Amaka, usually composed, softened for the first time in weeks. She promised Feyi that she would stop, that they would find a way to stay afloat without risking everything. But deep down, Feyi wasn't sure if Amaka could just keep the promise. Dr. Ibrahim's offer became more tempting by the day. Feyi knew she couldn't keep living on the edge, and the extra tutoring helped her regain the control over her studies. Eventually, she applied for the emergency grant and was relieved when it was approved. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was a start. Feyi felt a weight lift off her shoulders, but the growing distance between her and Amaka weighed heavily on her heart. Despite Amaka's promise to stop, she continued making risky deals. Feyi tried to distance herself from her, focusing on her studies and relying on the grant. But the growing gap between them was undeniable. Feyi couldn't take it anymore. One evening, she confronted Amaka, giving her an ultimatum. Either she walked away from the deals and focused on their future together, or they would end their relationship. It was the hardest thing Feyi had ever said, but she couldn't keep living in fear. Amaka was silent for a long time, her face unreadable. When she finally spoke, her words were soft but firm. "I need to do this, Feyi. I'm doing it for us." Feyi felt her heart break as Amaka chose the money over their love. They parted ways and Feyi threw herself into studies, trying to bury the pain. But it wasn't easy. Everywhere she went, she saw reminders of Amaka, the places they used to study, the cafe where they shared their first kiss, and the bench where they confessed their feelings under the stars. Feyi had lost the woman she loved, and the pain was unbearable. Though she had tried to move on, Feyi's heart still ached for Amaka. She found it difficult to focus on her studies, despite Dr. Ibrahim's support. She passed her exams, but the joy she once felt in medicine was gone. Her life felt empty without Amaka. Even though she had made the right choice, Feyi couldn't help but wonder if she had been too harsh, if she should have tried harder to save their relationship. Amaka's life took a dangerous turn. Without Feyi by her side, she threw herself even deeper into the world of underground deals. The once promising medical stint now found herself entangled with dangerous people, far removed from the girl who had once spent late nights studying for exams. Rumors began to circulate on campus, and Feyi heard whispers of Amaka's downfall. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she feared it was all true. Feyi couldn't stand by and watch Amaka destroy herself. Despite their painful breakup, she still cared deeply for her. After much deliberation, Feyi sought out Amaka, hoping to reach her before it was too late. She found her in a depleted apartment outskirts of town. Surrounded by evidence of her risky lifestyle, Amaka was a shadow of her former self. Her once bright eyes now dull with exhaustion and regret. Feyi confronted Amaka, pleading with her to leave this dangerous world behind. "This isn't you, Amaka," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're throwing your life away, Amaka." Amaka, for the first time in months, broke down. She admitted that she had lost control and didn't know how to stop. Feyi's heart ached for her, but she knew that this was the battle Amaka had to fight on her own. Amaka agreed to get help. With Feyi's support, she reached out to a counselor on campus, someone who could guide her away from the dangerous path she had been on. It was difficult for Amaka to face the mistakes she had made, but Feyi stood by her, offering a shoulder to lean on. Their love, though fractured, was still there, and Feyi believed Amaka could find her way back. Amaka began taking counseling sessions and slowly cutting ties with the underground world she had entangled herself in. It wasn't easy. There were nights when she felt the pull to return to the quick money and thrills, but Feyi's presence kept her grounded. They weren't officially back together, but they spent more time with each other. Every conversation felt like a step toward healing, a slow reconstruction of what they once had. As Amaka focused on her recovery, Feyi's family continued to pressure her about her future. Her parents, unaware of everything she had been going through, remained fixated on her academic success. One Sunday afternoon, they announced their intention to set Feyi up with the son of a family friend, a promising young man who had just returned from studying abroad. Feyi was horrified. She couldn't imagine living a lie with someone she didn't love, but she didn't know how to tell them the truth about her relationship with Amaka. With the mounting pressure from her family and the emotional toil of helping Amaka, Feyi broke down. One evening, after another argument with her parents about her lack of interest in their matchmaking efforts, she locked herself in her room and sobbed. She felt trapped between her love for Amaka and her family's expectation. For the first time, she considered running away, leaving everything behind to start over somewhere else, somewhere she could live openly. Just as Amaka seemed to be on the mend, she suffered a major setback. One of her former contacts tracked her down, threatening her and demanding money. Amaka, terrified, called Feyi in the middle of the night, her voice shaking. "I thought I was done with this, Feyi. I can't get out," she cried. Feyi rushed to her side, holding Amaka as she broke down. It was a stark reminder that leaving that world behind wasn't going to be easy. With Feyi's encouragement, Amaka reported the threats to the police. It was a bold move, one that put her at risk, but it was the only way to ensure her safety. The process was stressful and terrifying, but Feyi stayed by her through it all. Amaka's former contact was arrested, but the ordeal left Amaka shaking. Feyi realized that this fight was far from over, but at least now they had the law on their side. As Feyi helped Amaka deal with her problems, she couldn't keep hiding her own truth. One evening over dinner, her mother once again brought up the idea of Feyi meeting the family friend's son. Feyi snapped. "I don't want to meet him because I'm in love with someone else," she blurted out. The room fell silent, her parents staring in shock. "Her name is Amaka, and I've been in love with her for a long time," she continued, her voice trembling. The weight of her confession hung heavy in the air. Her parents' reaction was swift and severe. Her mother, deeply religious, burst into tears, praying aloud for Feyisayo. Her father sat in silence, his face dark in disappointment. They didn't say much that night, but their disapproval was clear. Feyi retreated to her room, shaken but also relieved. For the first time in her life, she had told them the truth, and she couldn't take it back. Feyi told Amaka about the confrontation with her parents. Amaka, who had always feared that Feyi would eventually be forced to choose between her and her family, was surprised by her bravery. "You stood up to them?" Amaka said, her voice filled with admiration. "I don't know if I could have done that." Feyi smiled, feeling a sense of pride, but also uncertainty about what could happen next. Her parents hadn't spoken to her since that night, and the silence was deafening. Weeks passed, and Feyi's parents barely acknowledged her presence. They avoided talking about Amaka, instead focusing on her studies and future, as though her confession had never happened. It was painful for Feyi to live in a house where her love was denied, but she refused to go back to pretending. She was determined to live her truth, even if it meant losing her family's approval. Surprisingly, Feyi's younger brother, Toby, reached out to her. He had overheard the argument and wanted to let her know that he supported her, even if her parents didn't. "I don't understand everything, but I will always love you, my sister," he said, bringing tears to Feyi's eyes. She hadn't expected anyone in her family to accept her, but Toby's quiet support gave her hope. For a brief moment, life seemed to settle down. Amaka was attending counseling regularly. Feyi was focusing on her studies, and the threats had stopped, though her relationship with her parents was strained. She found comfort in her brother's support and the love she had with Amaka. They spent quiet evenings together, talking about the future, dreaming of a life where they didn't have to hide anymore. Feyi entered her final semester of medical school. The pressure was immense, but for the first time in months, she felt like she could handle it. Amaka too was back on track, retaking the classes she had dropped during her descent the underground world. They both worked tirelessly, determined to graduate and build the future they had dreamed of together. Feyi's parents insisted that she came with them to visit their ancestral village, a yearly tradition. Though reluctant, she agreed. The village was full of memories, both good and bad, and Feyi had been there ever since she started dating Amaka. While they were there, her grandmother, a wise old woman, pulled her aside. "Your heart is troubled," she said, her voice low. Feyi was stunned. She hadn't told anyone in the village about the situation between her and her family, but her grandmother seemed to sense everything. "Follow your heart, child. Love is a gift," she whispered, leaving Feyi speechless. During their time in the village, Feyi's parents arranged a surprise meeting with the family friend's son. Furious, Feyi refused to engage, but her parents were relentless. They hadn't given up on the idea of her marrying a man, and the pressure was suffocating. After the encounter, Feyi exploded. "I told you I love Amaka, and nothing will change about that." Her father's response was icy, but Feyi stood her ground. She wouldn't let them control her life anymore. Back at school, Feyi found herself at crossroads. Her relationship with her parents had deteriorated beyond repair, and the strain of balancing her studies with her personal life was becoming overwhelming. She confided in Amaka, who suggested that they leave Nigeria after graduation and start afresh somewhere else. Where could they live openly? Are you enjoying the story? Do not forget to subscribe and follow for more like this. The idea was tempting, but Feyi wasn't sure she could leave her family behind even after everything. To Feyi's shock, her parents called for a family intervention involving a pastor and other relatives. They saw her love for Amaka as something they needed to fix. Feyi, though angry and hurt, sat through the intervention, refusing to engage. She wasn't going to be shamed for what she was experiencing. This experience left her feeling drained. Amaka held her that night, whispering words of comfort, reminding her that they were stronger together. As graduation approached, Feyi and Amaka's future became clearer. They both passed their final exams, and the reality of leaving school and entering the world set in. They began planning their future in earnest discussions, where they could go, what kind of life they wanted to build together. It was exciting but also terrifying. Made it through the hardest part, but the challenges were far from over. On the day of their graduation, Feyi's parents attended the ceremony but kept their distance. She glanced at Amaka in the audience. Amaka gave her a proud smile, and Feyi knew that no matter what happened with her family, she had found something real and lasting with Amaka. Feyi and Amaka moved to Ghana after graduation, where they hoped to find their freedom. Though it wasn't a complete escape from the judgment and stigma they faced in Nigeria, it was a fresh start. They rented a small apartment in Accra, close to a hospital where Feyi had secured a residency. Amaka found work at a local clinic, continuing her journey towards becoming a doctor. The adjustment was difficult at first, but the city offered them a sense of anonymity, a space where they could build lives without the constant watchful eyes of their family. The first few months in Ghana were challenging but rewarding. Feyi struggled with her demanding residency, but the work was fulfilling. Amaka, still healing from the traumatic experiences of the past, yet found comfort in her new job and in the stability of their relationship. Though they had left behind the turmoil in Nigeria, they both knew that their emotional scars would take time to heal. Still, they found comfort in each other, celebrating small victories like finding their favorite cafe and making new friends. One afternoon, while Feyi was at the hospital, Amaka received a surprise visitor, Feyi's younger brother, Toby. He had traveled all the way from Nigeria to see them. Toby explained that he had been following their progress through social media and had wanted to check in on them in person. Amaka welcomed him warmly, though Feyi was shocked when she came home to see him sitting in their living room. Toby reassured her that he wasn't there to judge, only to support her. Toby's visit gave Feyi hope that perhaps one day she could reconcile with her family. He shared stories of how their parents were coping without her, especially her mother, who had softened in the months since Feyi left. Though they hadn't openly accepted her relationship with Amaka, Toby hinted that with time and distance, they would reconsider their harsh judgments. Feyi didn't know if she could ever return to her family, but Toby's presence was a reminder that not all ties were broken. As the months passed, Amaka began to feel restless. Though she enjoyed her job, she missed the thrill of medical school and the challenges of learning something new. She also struggled with lingering guilt over the choices she had made in Nigeria. Despite Feyi's reassurance, Amaka couldn't shake that feeling she had let Feyi down. Their relationship, once filled with excitement and passion, had become weighed down by these unspoken tensions. One night, after a long shift at the hospital, Feyi came home to find Amaka waiting for her with a serious expression. "We need to talk," Amaka said. Feyi's heart sank, fearing the worst. But to her surprise, Amaka took her hand and smiled. "I don't want to keep running from the past or from the future. I want to build something real with you. Will you marry me?" Feyi, overwhelmed with emotion, said yes. The proposal wasn't grand or elaborate, but it was perfect for them, a quiet commitment of their love and future. Planning a wedding as a same-sex couple in West Africa was no easy task. Though Ghana offered them more freedom than Nigeria, it wasn't without its challenges. They decided to have a small private ceremony, inviting their closest friends and Toby. Feyi knew her parents wouldn't attend, but Toby promised to deliver a message to them after the wedding. The preparation brought excitement back into their relationship, reminding them of how far they have come. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and it was everything Feyi and Amaka hoped for. Under the shade of a large tree in a quiet park, They exchanged vows, promising to love each other and support each other through whatever life threw their way. Toby standing by Feyi's side beamed with pride as they kissed and were declared partners for life. Though it was a small gathering, the love that was surrounded was undeniable. For the first time in a long time, Feyi felt truly at peace. After the wedding, Feyi decided it was time to reach out to her parents. With Amaka's encouragement, she wrote them a long letter explaining how much she still loved them and hoped that one day they could accept her for who she is. She enclosed a few pictures from the wedding, hoping that seeing her happiness might soften their hearts. It was a leap of faith, but Feyi knew she couldn't keep waiting for them to make the first move. Weeks passed, and Feyi heard nothing from her parents. She tried not to dwell on it, focusing on her work and her new life with Amaka. Then one evening, as they were sitting in their balcony watching the sunset, Feyi's phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. It was short, only a few sentences, but it was more than Feyi had hoped for. Her mother wrote that she had received the letter and was proud of the woman Feyi had become. Even if she didn't fully understand her choices, she ended, "We will always love you." Feyi's heart soared in gladness. Though there was still a long way to go, she knew this was the first step towards healing the rift with her family. She looked at Amaka, her wife, and smiled. They had built something beautiful together, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as partners for life. Thank you for watching. If you're inspired by this story, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.